A higher calling can range from wanting to change the world to desiring a better life for oneself or loved ones. It's all about tapping into your drive for more, regardless of your level of ambition. It's about getting out of your own way, overcoming fear and uncertainty, and being driven by something bigger than yourself. Unreasonable ambition is necessary in a world where the answers are unknown and the complexity is high. So listen to your soul's call for change. Make choices to realize that change and lead your own vision on your sleeve. Those are words from today's guest, Vanessa Vershaw. And this episode of the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, we are going over unreasonable ambition. And before I dive into really the show and what you're going to get out of today's episode, I just wanted to say, hi, I'm back. I'm back from a month's worth of vacation. And I do got a couple of announcements, and I want to talk about, taking a little bit of time off. And that it's necessarily for us as leaders to take time off, to refresh, to refocus. And I'm sure I'll talk more about this later in the future, but I just wanted to talk about it quickly right now and say it wasn't that I was thinking about quitting or that I had given up. But no, it's all about just taking a breather from time to time. I enjoy summer, and I wanted to make sure that I got to enjoy the summer with my family, my boys, my friends, and so on. So that's where I've been. I've been relaxing, traveling, seeing friends, visiting family I haven't seen for, God, way too long. And now I'm back, and I want to now give you an announcement in that the Leader Growth Mastermind doors are reopened. We have reopened them. We closed them for the summer. Well, they're back. They're open again. So if you're interested in joining us, now is the time. And to kick this off, if you're listening to this live, I want to let you know I will be hosting a info session webinar all about the Leader Growth Mastermind. No strings attached, no commitment required. Come, listen, have your questions answered, check us out, and then make the decision whether or not it's right for you. And I'll be doing that next Wednesday, 16 August 2023 at 8:30 Eastern. All right, so that's when it will be live. Now, if you want to sit in on this webinar, I want to tell you that space is limited. So to jump at this and basically secure your seat to this free webinar, all you need to do is register at lead.boss.com/webinar. All right. All the information is going to be there. I have a nice page there to explain everything to you. All right. You can see the agenda and sign up right there. Again, that's lead.boss.com/webinar. All right. That's enough about where I've been and the announcements for what's going on in the ecosystem. Sorry, getting the rust off. I'm going to keep this raw, keep it real, because that is life. So let's talk about this episode. And we really talk about, Vanessa, I should say, talks about in the beginning, the importance of having a kill strategy and making decisions and where the costs outweigh the benefits. So she actually gives a personal example there of quitting a successful program, believe it or not, because of this. After that, we talk about the concept of higher calling and why it's so important and how that it can ignite the personal change. Later, we go into why it's important to have a network of individuals who believe in you and are willing to take risks with you. And then what you hear throughout the entire episode really is how unreasonable ambition is just the reoccurring theme throughout it, right? And what you don't know, and one of the key things is how much are we actually tapping into our potential? That gets answered in today's episode. And let me tell you, it is a lot less than what you think. So that's today's episode, folks. That's the announcements. This is enough. Let's hit the intro and get this going. Are you ready for this? All right, let's do it. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the 3 domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott.
Vanessa, welcome to the show. So good to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Scott. I'm super excited. Thanks for the opportunity.
We were just talking before I hit record. We do have a minor connection. You used to live here, or actually used to lecture at my rival school, Queen's.
I did. Yeah. Yeah, I used to do executive education at Queen's. I was a part-time lecturer as kind of add-on to my corporate role.
Yeah, I'm actually a RMC grad, so hence why I say rival school.
Oh, well, I noticed you looked a bit kind of tortured when I mentioned your face contorted and you looked tortured when I mentioned Queen's University. So sorry about that. But what a beautiful place. Come on. Collaboration.
It's all good. It's a new world, right? All right.
It is.
So today we're talking about being an ambitious leader for the leaders out there, and actually so far to say a unreasonably ambitious leader. So let's start with that as a starting point of like, what the heck is an unreasonable ambitious leader in the first place?
Yeah. So look, I think the big piece around being unreasonably ambitious is looking at the current world operating context, and we know what that looks like: turbulent, volatile, uncertain, unknown. Look, what I'm seeing in my world is leaders that are the worst version of themselves more often than not, kind of dazed, confused, overwhelmed, not knowing how to navigate the unknown, obsolete operating systems, bad intel, trying to reach a destination. They don't know what it looks like. And so unreasonable ambition is around, how do you actually realize ambitions in a world where you don't know the answer? How do you still have the level of impact that you want to have with a bigger worldview and enjoy the ride at the same time? And it takes unreasonable ambition, right? I mean, you'd agree, probably not a time to be reasonable given the complexity of the world right now. So unreasonable ambition, right? Unreasonable ambition is about, firstly, being driven by a higher calling, being driven by a calling that is bigger than yourself, so that you can overcome the fear, the ego, the uncertainty to actually drive results and create the life you want, irrespective of the weather conditions, knowing that you've got this. And that's what it's about: unreasonable and big ambitions. Now, big ambitions can be for the world or for yourself. It doesn't matter. You determine the size of that ambition and what works for you. But we have to get out of our own way to do that. And I believe we have to be driven by a high calling to do that, because that's what keeps us going when the going gets tough. So that's the essence of unreasonable ambition. That's what I think the world needs from us right now.
No, the world definitely needs motivated and ambitious leaders for sure. Hence why we are here doing this right now. Right, this is my way of doing that. But that higher calling, that strikes a nerve with me in a good way, of course, in that, it really strikes a chord. And I fully support what you're saying there and believe in it too. But sometimes leaders out there are like, hey, yes, this higher calling, but how do I know it's the actual higher calling? How do I know this is where I'm meant to go? And you kind of hinted at it, and they get this imposter syndrome that comes out like, oh, who am I to go after this? Why should it be me? I don't have the experience. I don't have the talents. I don't have this. I don't have that. I'm just little old me. Who's going to listen to me? Who's going to follow me, etc. So how do we find that higher calling, and two, start to get out of that imposter syndrome space?
So I'll start with the imposter syndrome first, because that's probably the biggest blocker is the belief situation. And here's the bottom line. The reality is that we are not tapping into 60% of our potential as human beings. That's the reality. And so people that say to me, V, they call me VV, I can't do this, I don't know how to do it, blah, blah, blah. It's absolute rubbish. Part of the work that we do is helping leaders actually access that additional 60% so that they have more to work with. But that belief and that lack of belief is the biggest blocker, and it's actually not true. So that's the first thing I'll say is we're not accessing 60% of our capability to be able to drive forward in new directions. And that's creative potential as well. It's almost like this sleeping giant that we need to wake up. And unfortunately, the problem is that many leaders and many people wait for some cataclysmic life event or some survival situation to actually shock them out of that sleep pattern. Does that make sense? Before they actually know what they're capable of.
100%.
We need to get there faster. And the reality is, Scott, that actually we've all been here before. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, and then I'll link it to higher calling. The amount of executive teams that I'm with the room with, and we're looking at this unknown chart, destination, we don't know what we're doing, and so on and so forth. And it's feeling scary. It's feeling like we're in survival mode. There's so much at stake, high stakes. And I say to them, tell me about a time that has shaped the leader you become today. And inevitably, you find that everybody's been through harrowing trials and tribulations in their life to get them to where they are today. So what's different about this? Why are we acting as if the operating context that we're in today is any different? We've all been here before, but we forget. We forget that actually we've already built the skills. We know what to do, but because it looks a little different, smells a little different, we think that it is different. And it really isn't. We just need to pull out what we already know. So that's the first thing. The higher calling is about whatever that means to you. So a higher calling can be wanting to change the world. If you've got big ambitions around making a massive dent in the universe, so for example, energy transition could be that. It could be some UN's SDG goals, lifting the world out of poverty. It could be what climate change, whatever it is. It could be big and societal. And so that's one kind of yardstick. But the other one could be simply wanting a better life, right? And whatever you need to do that. The other one could be love for your family, wanting to create a better life for your family. So whatever that is, whether it be something for your personal life or something for your career, that is a forcing function to get you to drive for more and get beyond your own fears, so that the desire to achieve that goal overrides your fear or anxiety about what ifs, is where we need to get to. And so that's what the higher calling is about. There's no judgment on what that higher calling is. And sometimes leaders say to me, but V, I don't have those ambitions. What if I don't want to change the world? Yes, but tell me about your world. Is there anything you want to change in your world? So it can be micro, it can be macro, but whatever it is for you, it's about hooking into that drive for more. And not everybody's unreasonably ambitious, right? Not everybody wants that. But for those that are, here's how you do it. And that's what I talk about. It's the 1%.
I love it. I love it all. I, I liked how you mentioned like how a lot of people need something catastrophic happen in their life before they make some kind of personal change. And I use that example all the time. It's like the person who has the person who's severely obese, who has the heart attack, survives it, and then suddenly becomes the fittest person you've ever met in your life. Why? Because they suddenly the pain of staying the same is now outweighs the pain of the change required for the change. Right? That's how I put it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Now, you talked about the higher calling. You talked about these different aspects of the higher calling. Would it be possible in your mind to link it to different things? And if you do more linkages, that higher calling becomes more powerful. And probably to give you some context, I'll use a personal example. This podcast, right? Higher calling. Tagline of show is lead, don't boss. I will tell you flat, blunt, there is a story behind that tagline of a professional story. I'll leave it there. There's a story there from work where, we had a supervisor who was quote unquote the boss. And if you can think of what I mean by boss in that context, like that, our authoritative tyrant, etc. Right. So there was that. I'm about to hit year 22 of military service. So I'm still serving the country. I do this on my part-time. At 25 is when I hit pension time. So that's decision point. So one, I have a higher calling to try to rid the world of horrible bosses. Two, I'm looking at, providing for my family, bringing more stability. So now suddenly if I can turn this into my full-time gig, that brings me, obviously enough income. I can retire from the military, not worrying, have to jumping on a plane and going across the planet and potentially get shot at, not moving anymore, not having all the stresses of military life. So I see multiple linkages to higher callings here for me for this. Would you say that's one, reasonable or unreasonable in your context? And two, does that make it even more powerful?
I think it makes it more powerful because you're looking for more. You're looking to be more. You're looking to create more. You're looking to do more. You're looking to evolve. What I hear in your story is somebody whose soul is impatient to evolve beyond where you've come from. And whatever that looks like, and you found your place to do that. And you'll probably find another after this, right? This is not your last rodeo.
Probably.
I think there'll be, I think as human beings, we have many evolutions. But what I love about your story is that you're listening to that rumbling. You're listening to that loud roar that's saying to you, you need to do something different. You're done. You need to do something different. And a soul that is impatient to evolve. That's what I hear in your story. And a lot of people don't listen to that soul, right? They don't listen to that gnawing. They keep it in their tummies. They know, and inevitably, most of my clients will have those moments, right? But it's whether you listen or not that I think makes the difference. And then the choices that you make around how you're going to realize that, whatever that gnawing is. And it might take a series of experiments. You might not nail it the first time. You might not get it right the first time. You might think it's one thing, but it's about continuing to evolve and try until you land on that thing or those things that enable you to lead with your soul and connect more deeply to your life. And I think that's the beauty of the story that you just told, is that you listened and you're trying something that is working for you for now and is having impact. But I've got no doubt that there'll be another iteration of you. I can hear it soon.
That's interesting. I feel like I'm on a coaching call here. So, I've had a look at your book, and I've unfortunately not had the time to go through it fully yet. Keyword yet. But there's an aspect of it. You talk about, you have a full chapter on it, and you talk about the dark side of the unreasonable ambition, right?
Yeah.
And I'd love to dive into that, because I feel like as leaders, as people, we need to be wary of, not wary, it's the wrong word. We need to be cognizant of the potential consequences and where we could end up. So I'd love for us to talk a bit about that, so the leaders have a full understanding out there.
Oh, look, absolutely. I think it's like entrepreneurship. I almost think so I'll start with that. When we are presented these stories in media on entrepreneurs, we're given all the good stuff, right? We see these glossy plastic images of people with extraordinary success making billions and millions, but we don't hear about the cost of it. And I have a very close colleague who is good friends with Elon Musk. And so I hear all the stories about, the man behind all of this extraordinary stuff. And it's the same with unreasonable ambition. When you are part of that 1% that strives to execute, deliver, realize unreasonable ambitions, not everybody's going to be with you on it. And I liken it to being an outcast. When you're somebody that thinks like that, you're often on the outside looking in. You're often in a minority. You're often almost like the witch that could get burnt at the stake because you think differently, because you're prepared to try things and be the first, because you're prepared to break ground, because you're prepared to risk, because the desire and the need to realize your unreasonable ambition is stronger than you are, and you have no choice but to action it. And I say that as somebody who's unreasonably ambitious, right? With it can come incredible judgment, people throwing popcorn at you from the cheap seats. You make yourself a target when you are unreasonably ambitious, particularly if you share it with the world, because it is presenting renegade thinking and new ways of looking at the world and new ways of thinking that are not the mainstream or the norm. So you are more likely to get flogged. But you do it anyway. You do it anyway because that's who you are, right? It's absolutely a choice. And it can be a very lonely road as well. So there are consequences to choosing this, to doing this. And there is an example in the book of a leader who's allowed me to use his name from Canada, Raphael Lapointe, who is extraordinarily unreasonably ambitious, young buck, innovative, creative, crazy in the best possible way, goes in to lead as the Director General of one of Canada's most staunch banking institutions in Quebec, Desjardins, and didn't take the time because of his bias for action and just wanted to get it done, the passion for what he was trying to achieve, which was to revolutionize the banking industry the way he wanted to, didn't take the time to bring people along with him and really show patience and get them digesting who he was and what he was trying to achieve, got voted off the island in the most spectacular and public way. And so that's the risk. If you don't think about how you're going to socialize your unreasonable ambitions, if you don't have a tribe that you bring along with you, it can be a path of destruction and social, social ostracism. Because also people who are unreasonably ambitious, again, do think differently. And we are the targets for that scrutiny. We are the targets for people who are afraid. And so that's what happens. So, but knowing that, as I said, you do it anyway. You do it anyway. Whatever the consequence, you know that in being who you are is to make yourself a target, and you would rather live a life of unreasonable ambition, whatever that looks like, than blend into the wallpaper and be beige. And that's the choice you make.
Yep, you definitely do. Those are some great words. Definitely a great story to add in there with the example. But you hit on something that as leaders we have to be cognizant of, and that is we're not alone. We have teams, whether that's at work with our work teams, or if they're looking at it from a personal standpoint. We have families, we have friends, we have coworkers. So how do we go about getting the tribe to to follow along, because in the end of the day, no matter how ambitious you are, you can't do it alone. I'm a firm believer that you can't do it alone, right? As they say, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go with the team, right?
African proverb, love it.
Right. So, how do we unreasonably ambitious folks get that tribe, get that group, and follow along with us?
Well, I think that's such a beautiful question, and I'll just go to a little story which helps put it in context. Have you ever seen the movie Braveheart?
Oh, but of course.
Okay, William Wallace, right? So William Wallace, we've got the William Wallace and we've got the Scottish Lords. William Wallace, people don't realise, was a bum. He had nothing. He was a peasant. He had no belongings, he had no wealth, no status. How did a bum get the nation of Scotland to follow him? You tell me. Let's go there for a second and then I'll wrap it up. You tell me. Go on. Go on, Scott.
I'm trying to remember the full story. But
what did he do? What did he do?
Well, he got married in secret just to avoid got married in secret, and then to avoid basically the lords being able to have sex with his wife for the first time post marriage, right? So that's part of the story. So, but then when they did it, and they actually I believe they raped and killed her. He basically went nuts and killed a whole slew of people. But what he was saying was that you're not going to breed out the Scots, and that he rallied people around. He rallied them around their heritage, their nationality as Scots, more so than anything else.
Yeah, he wore his vision on his sleeve for Scotland. You know, they talk about wearing your heart on your sleeve. I say wear your vision on your sleeve, and that's that is the role of leadership. Wear your vision on the sleeve so that it is so clear and so palpable and so seeable that there is absolutely no confusion as to who I am, what I'm here to do, and why we are all here. And link your people to that as the first place. And then inspire. Talk to them about why they should care about this. Talk to them about how it's going to change their lives, what it's going to mean for them. Get their buy-in to the vision and build the groundswell beneath you as wind beneath your wings to carry you forward to realize your ambition. The role of the leader has changed, as you would know, Scott. It's gone from one to one to one to many. And to do that requires absolute inspiration, deep connection, leading with empathy, clarity around purpose and why, and people being completely connected in to actually be part of that. It's why we've moved from calling teams to calling them tribes. What's the difference? Is because the tribe is around an emotional connection. I would bleed and die for the cause. And that is where we need to be. And that is how unreasonably ambitious leaders not only have the ambition and use their gifts or access their gifts, but actually rally the force behind them to execute. And execution is everything. And it takes everybody. And that's how you do it. So having higher order social skills, leading with empathy, being authentic, being real, which is rare, and bringing energy to your people, to your lead, is what drives you forward. And in the book, I've showcased a lot of different leaders that do it like that. And that's part of the secret. It's how you get the support of your people. They want to be part of whatever it is that you're doing. It's contagious. It's starting a new movement behind whatever your idea is. And I think as part of that, it's also, and here's the other side, it's also being really clear that not everybody's going to come with you, and being okay with that. Not everyone's going to like you or be part of your calling, but those that do will power your way forward and be on the journey with you. And you asked me about the dark side earlier. Dark side, good side, I'm not sure, but you lose a lot of people along the way. As you evolve and move into your potential, and do big things, you lose people along the way who just aren't with you. It's almost like when you go to a wedding, right? The people that RSVP and come and those that don't, and you start to see this separation of the wheat and the chaff, like this Moses moment of the sea parting. It's the same thing, I think, when you're unreasonably ambitious. Somebody very wise, actually, my customer experience manager, Kerry Allen, who's amazing, said to me, I got really upset. I thought, why isn't so-and-so supporting me in this? Why aren't they with me? And she said to me, you know what, Vivi? She said, you need to trust that your tribe will come. The right people will be there for you and not worry about the rest. And I thought, why has it taken me 48 years to get to that place? Well, that's the recognition I have. It's always worried me so much that I can't convince everybody to come on my wild rides with me. She said, you don't need everybody. You just need your people. And I think that's just the most sage advice around this is find your people, but also understand that there will be attrition. You're going to lose people along the way, and that's okay. Be all right with it.
How much is that other people's perceptions of you? Because, I remember hearing this example once is like, you go to grandma's house one day and she's like, hey, I'm going to run a marathon. And your first initial gut reaction is like, hell no. Grandma, you're not going to run a marathon? What are you doing? You're crazy.
Yeah.
And they're like, why? And if you boil it down, it's because grandma is pushing against the the limitations of the perception that we have of grandma, which is grandma sits at home and knits and makes cookies and takes care of the grandkids and, takes afternoon naps and stuff. Doesn't run 26.2 miles, right? But I was reading a news article the other day. I believe she was 97 years old, did a marathon recently. So
amazing.
Is it possible?
Amazing. Wow.
Right. So is it possible? Yes. Is it? And is it for a 97-year-old person unreasonably ambitious? Well, I guess not unreasonably anymore because it's been done.
Amazing. Amazing.
But it goes back to the whole perception of others and pushing against the perception of others, and then requiring them to either change their perception of you, of the team, of the organization, or as you said, get out of the way.
Get out of the way. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a big part of it, right? And a lot of organizations that I serve, that's a big part of it is we are sifting through the talent and the people in the organization. We actually want the people who go against the grain. We're trying to find those people that are prepared to be rebel talent within their organizations because we know that we need people who are prepared to take risks, be themselves, be bold and courageous to really affect step change. And people who believe before they see. Believing is seeing, right? And that's a big part of it as well. Believing is seeing, finding those people that want to do more, and it isn't everybody. And you are up against a bigger tide of people who are naysayers. I call them chicken littles. Or as one of my clients calls them dementors. Like I can't swear on this podcast, but, go away, dementors. Go away, you dementors. And I've been doing a lot of work trying to help my leaders really figure out who those people are and also make decisions around, because it's like the good child and the naughty child, right? Often the rabbit hole that leaders will go down when they're trying to effect unreasonable ambition or impossible change is they tend to get caught in the spiral of the negative people. It's like the naughty child. If there's a good child and a naughty child, we spend all our time trying to sort out the naughty child, and then the good child actually gets left like baby in the corner, right? We don't want that. We need to actually make decisions around, let's focus our energy on those folks who are actually going to evolve and move the organisation forward and help us to realise these unreasonable ambitions. And let's stop wasting frigging time on these terrorists who cannot be converted. Goodbye. See you later. Let's get faster at moving them on. Go away and get out of my space, because you do need the energy. You need the energy to realize unreasonable ambition, and the energy of many, right? But we spend all our time on the naughty kids, and people get caught in that trap. But rather than saying, you know what, we don't want you. If you don't believe, then go away. And I'm being polite. Get out. Think about energy transition. And, I saw Nobel Prize winner Mohammed Yusuf last year talking about the fact that climate change, that it's almost like the house is burning and people are having a party on the inside. We can't afford to wait. We have to be able to generate unreasonable ambition at scale to solve for the world's energy crisis. We're facing extinction. We don't have time to wait. What are you waiting for? So to do that, we've got to focus on people that can actually come to the table and believe and do and execute on this. And so that's where I'm really focusing my work on at the moment, is helping hit these big goals with the organizations that I serve and build a huge groundswell of energy and people that are actually do believe that they can do this, because you know what? They can. They absolutely can.
I love how you talked about stop focus on the negative folks and focus on the positive team members. Have you ever heard of the 90-10 rule?
Tell me about it.
90-10 rule. This is when I got in the Army and I got through RMC and then started my actual training to go into my first job. We had instructors tell you know what the 90-10 rule is, right? And we're like, what's the 90-10 rule, right? And he's like, 9% of your time is taken up with 10% of your people. So what he's saying is that 9% of your time is taken up by the 10% of folks who are negative or bad apples, etc. Yeah. So I hated it. Eventually learned to come to hate it. Eventually became so. Fast forward quite a number of years, and I was placed in command of a squadron of 200 members. And I was sitting with my team one day. I said, guys, you know the 90-10 rule? And everyone was like, yeah, we all know the 90-10 rule. I'm like, it's BS. And I slammed my fist down. We are not doing the 90-10 rule. We're doing the 90-90 rule. We're spending 9% of our time and 90% of our people, the good people. And that other 10%, if they want more of my time, they're going to have to walk the floor and earn their way back into becoming a part of the 90. That is how we're going to operate. That's where we're going to focus. Like if you look at it from an investment standpoint, if you've got two stocks, one that's tanking and one that is astronomically producing, I'm going to take my extra money and put it into the one that's producing, not put it into the one that's tanking in hopes that it's going to rebound.
That's right. So, and when you have a laser-like focus on that, your decisions become easy, right? When you set the parameters up for your team and your people around that, and you talk about what's in and what's out, you talk about what it's going to take to realize your ambition or realize whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, and that you don't have time to waste. And then you have to follow through, right? You have to have the courage to then execute on that. It's like follow up with kids. If there's a consequence to something they've done that's naughty, follow through, right? Follow through. It is a non-negotiable. And that's really it. Because chances are you're not going to be able to convert those people in the time that you need to get moving. Not unless something drastic happens. Some people are salvageable, for sure. But normally you know where the toxicity lies, and toxicity spreads. When you're trying to get people to, lift the world out of energy poverty, which is what one of my clients is doing, you know what? We got no time for you. If you don't believe, go. Got no time. The world there's more at stake. And so you're absolutely right about that. But I do spend a lot of my time trying to help leaders build the courage to make those decisions and have absolute clarity about why, how, and why they need to move people on in a really constructive way, because they just won't get there if they don't, right? So that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Decision making is crucial. It's one of the components of leadership, as I put it. And with that, those major decisions what's your advice to leaders out there on making those decisions and then sticking to them? Because sometimes people get wrapped around the axle of that analysis paralysis, what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. But as you've kind of alluded to, we don't have time for all that.
No.
You do need to be decisive as a leader.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is very fast. Sometimes you can take a little bit more time, but at the end of the day, you still need to make decisions. So what's your best advice to leaders out there listening?
Look, there's a couple of sides to it, and I think it's the couple of sides to the coin to good decision making is sometimes you've got to drive fast, sometimes you've got to drive slow, right? When do we need to drive slow? We need to drive slow or even become still to see the moves of the world. When we're trying to figure out where to go next and to harness our strategic foresight, we have to slow down to be able to see. And that's a practice that leaders don't do very often. And that's why I'm seeing a lot of them not really evolving fast enough, because to understand what the future needs from you, to be able to anticipate what's coming, you have to stand still to see those moves and actually tap into equal parts intuition and equal parts rational brain. So that's the first part. Once you have that data, once you have those insights, then you've got to move quickly to execution, right? And it's this constant dance, right? It's like contemporary and ballet all at the same time. It's this dance that we have to do as leaders in our decision making. But, it's also about focusing on what matters most. So don't spend time making decisions that are minutiae. Figure out, as I said before, what is the future direction? What is the bigger play? And prioritize and make the decisions that are going to get you there faster. Don't take too long, right? And that's the big piece around decision making that would be my advice. Make sure they're data driven, rely on your intuition, and then move like the clappers to execute. And understand that you might get it wrong. In fact, guaranteed you probably will. It might take a few goes, but it's that mindset, isn't it, in decision making around increasing your appetite for risk, because when you increase your appetite for risk, you accelerate your ability to win, don't you? I think about Elon Musk recently, who blew up his rocket, pushed it to its limits. And, my friend was telling me that when he was interviewed, he was so happy. It was like doing a happy dance. And people were saying, what? Why are you dancing? Your rocket's just blown up. It cost billions. He says, because from it we've learnt. Because we push the rocket to its limits, we understand now what we need to do to make it work. So you've got to be prepared in your decision making to go with 70% of the information, blend of intuition and rational, and understand that you might get it wrong. And that's okay. It's how you bounce back from that decision and what you take with the new knowledge you generated to be better the next time. Because that's what it's going to take, right? You've got to leave your ego at the door and keep trying, keep experimenting until eventually you land. But it takes a very different mindset around decision making as well. And we're not trained that way. Like most leaders are trained in absolutes, aren't they? That there's a right or a wrong way. They rely heavily on their old tricks and mastery in a particular area to be able to deliver on a particular problem or solution. And that's just not the way it is anymore. We have to go deeper. We have to go broader. We have to go wider. We have to increase our appetite for risk. We have to slow down to hear the intuition. And then we have to speed up with the evidence that's created, knowing that we'll probably fail the first time.
I love pretty much all of that. All of it, I will say. It's funny. You mentioned the absolutes, and you're so bang on. I don't know how many times I've coached people, talked to clients. I host a mastermind community with leaders from all over. We do weekly calls and stuff like this, and with them, even them. So I have a few clients that are still dealing in absolutes. I'm like, listen, folks, this is how it is. Make the best decision you can with the information you got within the time frame that is allotted to you. If you go and execute, just like you said, execute on it, right? But here's the kicker, and this is where I find leaders stumble and get kind of stuck, is that they're like, well, if I go down the wrong path and it becomes known that I went down the wrong path because, some new information pops up, I'm stuck in the wrong path. Like, wrong. No, you're not. They're like, what do you mean? Like, I made a decision. I have to stick through it. As you said, I'm like, yes. But once that information comes out, you now have a new decision to make.
Correct.
The situation has changed.
Pivot.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay to be wrong, right?
But you're not wrong until you are aware you're wrong, and then you're only going to be wrong if you stay on the wrong path.
Correct. You got to know. You got to have a kill strategy, right? What's your kill strategy? That's what I call it. What's your kill strategy? When do you know when to give it up, or engage in what I call child head banging behavior, where your head becomes bloodied from banging your head on the wall over and over and over again. And that's most leaders. I see them banging their heads on the wall, right? Know when to give it up. Kill it. Kill it early. If it's not generating the returns, if the cost outweighs the benefits, kill it. Next, move on. Try something else. But we hang on, don't we? Because it's certainty. Our brains crave certainty. We want to feel comfort in the certainty. And you just can't do that. You got to kill it when it's done. It's the same thing with me. I actually, I'll share it with you. I won an award last year for Trailblazer Award, Leadership Award and it was predominantly based on a program that I developed 4 years ago to try and help women really become the entrepreneurs of their own life and be successful at work. And last year, at the end of the year, I actually let everyone know that I wasn't doing it anymore. And I said, what? You just won an award for it. I said, I know. But how can you do that? You got nominated, like you got the prize and everything. I said, exactly, I'm done. I'm done. It's time to move on, right? I've gone as far as I can with this. What's next? Right? And it takes a lot of guts to quit when you're winning. But I knew that was the right decision to make because the cost outweighed the benefit and the world needed something else from me. And so I wrote my next book instead, right? And that's the next place I need to go because I hear where I need to go next. Trailblazer for Women was right at the time. It's what women needed. I stepped in. Now I need to step in with Unreasonable Ambition. And so, but, most people thought I was crazy. I'm not going to lie to you. They could not believe that I was stepping off the pedestal when I was in the middle of so much fanfare and recognition. But that was the right decision for me, and everything in my body screamed me to do that, screamed out to me. If I had listened to the voices of others, I wouldn't have done it. But I listened to my own voice, and that's the piece. Your own voice has to be strong, has to be loud, because it's your voice of instinct, it's your voice of intuition, it's your ancient wisdom calling to you, telling you something. And you need to listen to that. That's the most powerful voice you have. And I did. And here we are.
That's a powerful way to begin to wrap up this show, I feel like. Wow. Congratulations, one, on the award, and then two, having the courage to walk away for what you believe to be something even more powerful. So well done to you. Vanessa, before we wrap up here, I do got a couple last questions for you. The first question is all the guests here at the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, and that's according to you, what makes a great leader?
Oh, you're joking. A great leader is knowing who you are and leading with who you are, not with what you know. That makes a great leader.
That's awesome. That's powerful right there. Short and powerful. And finally, how can people find you, follow you? Shameless plug. It's all about you. Have at it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm actually changing websites at the moment, but I know a bit of a bad timing, but you can currently reach me on www.reinventionconsulting.com.au. You can also reach me on LinkedIn as well, Instagram as well. And and watch this space. And obviously my book, Unreasonable Ambition, is now available in North America on Barnes & Noble, and also Amazon. So I would love to get some feedback, hear your thoughts, hear your stories, however you want to get those to me, because every time I hear a story, it helps me to shape my next contribution. I have started writing the next book, which is about moving from I to we. How do you create unreasonable ambition at scale once you've done the work on yourself? So thanks very much for this opportunity, Scott. It's been just great to have a conversation about it and explore different themes and, remember why I'm on this journey. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. And I heard a plug for a second episode in there near the end. So we'll have to definitely keep in touch. And once that comes out, have you back to talk about unreasonable ambition within, specifically our teams. But thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us here today.
Thanks very much, Scott.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend, win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss. And thanks for coming out. Take care now.